Welcome back to BSing Sports. With me, as always, is Ryan. You'll notice Tim is unavailable this evening. He had an emergency with one of his pets. And as I've said several times on the show, family and pets do come first.
He has several lizards, 3 pigs, 2 cows, a goat, and a dog. You can guess which one's hurt. If you guess right, we'll give you some free merch.
And a crisp high five.
Yep.
So we're just going to get right into it. We're going to have a quick show, really quick recap show for you guys here. I'm sorry. I can't even see me. Y'all probably couldn't see me. All right. So
you can't
really quick recap week, like I was saying. Let's see. Let's start it right off. We already talked about the Chiefs and Chargers, so we don't really have to touch on that again. First game on the docket here, the Giants. I guess it's considered an upset over the Panthers. Tell me a little bit about how you're feeling about the. Yeah, I know, right? About the Giants and their 2-0 start right now.
Yeah, I mean, I figured that the Panthers were going to win this game. You know, if you look at the roster, they clearly have the more talented skill positions. Rather, you know, Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore. I would say Christian McCaffrey is probably, you know, a hair better than Saquon Barkley, and DJ Moore is definitely better than any receiver that is on the Giants roster at this point in time. But truthfully speaking, I didn't see this coming. The Giants look like a completely different team. In all honesty, they look like kind of like the Lions do, where the head coaching change may have sparked something. They may have found the right guy right now to lead their squad. So I'm thoroughly impressed with the Giants so far. Granted, they haven't really played anybody that's played well. They've beaten 2 0-2 teams, but you know, you can only control who you play against. You can't really control who you play against. So good for them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're handling business when they have to handle business. They beat the Titans, who we have already discussed are probably a playoff team, and then they hold off the Panthers, who we said wasn't a playoff team but was a fringe above 500 team. So I mean, again, good for the Giants, and really good for Saquon Barkley because he's carrying that team. I know the defense is playing well, but without Barkley and his 4.2 yards per carry right now, they'd be in a completely different boat. So good for Saquon Barkley, good for the Giants. Steelers at home lose to the New England Patriots. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I got to say about that.
Yeah, the Steelers are a weird team. They have been for a few years now. They tend to beat the teams that you wouldn't suspect them to beat. You know, they take on the Cincinnati Bengals last week, obviously the reigning Super Bowl runner-ups, and they forced 5 turnovers. You know, Joe Burrow looked extremely uncomfortable the whole game. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers executed their game plan to perfection and beat the Bengals 23-20. And then this week, you know, against a lesser opponent, still at home, they find a way to lose. Trubisky looked very uncomfortable the whole game. Offense could never really get in any sort of rhythm. So.
Yeah, and it starts like that make you wonder whether or not the Steelers might make a move here in the middle of the season. Let's say hypothetically they're kind of sort of in the playoff race because that division doesn't look strong. We can talk about that in a minute. They're kind of sort of still in the playoff race, but Trubisky's got really poor numbers. I'm wondering if maybe Tomlin, even though he said he wanted to sit Pickett the entire season, maybe he doesn't.
I think they'll probably end up sitting Pickett the whole year. We'll get into it later, but there was another rookie quarterback that got some showtime this past weekend, and it did not, in fact, look good at all.
A game that I watched, and I'm sad that I had to watch it because it was an absolute crap show. Buccaneers and Saints.
You know, this is what we've come to expect from the Buccaneers and the Saints the last few years is a hard-nosed, you know, tough, grinded football game, and the Saints usually come out on top of these. But, I mean, Jameis Winston was not good all game, and for the most part, neither was Tom Brady until the fourth quarter. Mike Evans obviously got ejected. So did Marshawn Lattimore. Mike Evans is suspended 1 game for essentially initiating that brawl. He is appealing that suspension. I do believe that'll get turned over. I feel like that was a weak suspension, but for the meantime, you know, the Buccaneers could potentially be without their top receiver and Chris Godwin. So that's a big loss.
Yeah. They did just sign Cole Beasley to their practice squad earlier this afternoon.
Yeah.
It's expected that he'll be elevated for game time on Sunday. A game that I got laughed at for calling, the Jets.
I also picked the Jets, so
You did also pick the Jets. Oh, I probably should tell you guys our records. I went 12-4 this week. Timmy went 9-8, a huge fall off of what he did last week.
9-7.
And Ryan moves up to 10-6. 9-7. You're correct. I'm sorry. 9-7.
I went 10-6 this week.
You went 10-6, right?
Sweet, dude.
Yeah. So our totals right now in third place is Ryan at 18-13-1. In second place is Tim, 19-12-1. And in first place with my really good week this week, it won't happen every week. I've taken the lead at 21-10-1. So
I feel like that tie should go to me, man. Like I definitely picked the Texans to win. They were huge underdogs.
You also picked the Texans to beat the Broncos, which they didn't do.
I almost spoke that into existence, though, because you were getting ready to say on air they were going to blow them out.
I was close. Yeah, I really was close. So yeah, the Saley-led Jets behind Joe Flacco take on the Browns.
Is that the next game we're talking about, the Jets one?
Yeah, the Jets one. Yeah, take on the Browns and win. I don't really have much else to say other than they win. Listen, they played really well. Garrett Wilson had a fantastic game. You can go.
Huge mistake by Nick Chubb, though. I mean, he scored that touchdown with 1 minute and 57 seconds left instead of sliding down to burn out some time. So gave the Jets the ball back and a chance down 30-17 because Cam York had not Cam York, the kicker had missed the extra point. So that. That it's the little things that matter sometimes. You can never take anything for granted. And if you didn't learn anything at all from your previous X amount of years of watching football, however old you are, this past weekend should have showed you no lead is safe.
Yes. We will get into right now the next game, one of those leads that was not safe.
So Miami Dolphins. We have a down 13 with less than 2 minutes left, a comeback victory. And then we have
the Miami Dolphins visiting the Baltimore Ravens, coming from behind 21 points down. I think what was it, 9 minutes left in the game?
It was late in the third, I think, when Lamar Jackson scored that touchdown run. I mean, the Ravens offense took flight from the word go, and they scored 35 points through three quarters. Lamar Jackson had a long touchdown run. Rashad Bateman had a long. This game was just entirely splash plays. I don't think there was a gain that went less than 10 yards at any point during this game. It was incredible. I mean, you look at Lamar Jackson had runs of like 17, 19 yards and breaks off the long one. Bateman had a long play. Tyreek Hill had a few long catches. Jalen Waddle had a few long plays. I mean, Mike Gesicki made that acrobatic touchdown catch followed by a really horrible, gritty impression. So he's got to work on that a little bit. Still, I mean, it was just splash play after splash play. It was explosive offense. I think offense is on display. And go ahead and give Tua some credit. You and I have both said that he's not going to have a bad season. We're not that low on Tua, and he kind of showed why. That he has two of the most elite, game-changing weapons by his side.
Yeah, and he utilized them to perfection. And a lot of that's got to do with coaching. We've discussed it in the years past where good coaches put players in position to be successful on their skill set. And right now the Dolphins are doing that for Waddle and Hill very, very, very well. And Tua is capitalizing. I mean, let's not put away what Tua is doing. He's capitalizing on it. Obviously, if he doesn't make those throws like you saw Kirk Cousins not do last night, we'll get into that game. They're not as successful. So congratulations to Tua. Congratulations to the Dolphins for going into Baltimore and beating the Ravens. They were, what were they, 7.5-point underdogs in that game?
Who?
The Dolphins.
No. I think it was Ravens by 3. It was in Miami. They would have never been that big underdogs.
It was in Baltimore.
It was in Baltimore. But yeah, no, it was Ravens by 3. I remember that because I thought it was going to be Ravens by 7.
The Doug Peterson-led Jaguars get their first win of his era.
The Colts haven't beaten the Jaguars in Jacksonville in 8 years. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I didn't. That's a nice stat. I did not know that. I knew it hadn't been the last 4 years.
That's incredible. That, we think of the Jaguars, and we'll touch on another team that we also think of this, that we should stop thinking of like this, is, we just think, oh, they're so lowly, they're so bad. They've been, bad for so long outside of the one outlier year in 2017 where they almost made the Super Bowl. But they might compete this year. You look at how Doug Peterson turned the Eagles around in 2016. They went 7-9 that year. with a rookie quarterback. I know Trevor Lawrence isn't a rookie, but a similar scenario could definitely unfold here. The Jaguars look way more competitive than I thought. And on the flip side of that, the Colts look terribly lost. And I've sat on this show week after week, and I'm going to continue to say on this show week after week, Matt Ryan in no way, shape, or form is an upgrade over Carson Wentz. Colts fans and fans around the league were kidding themselves when they thought the Colts were going to be any better of a football team with Matt Ryan at the helm. He hasn't been a good quarterback in some time, and you can sit there and argue that, well, he hasn't had any weapons. Well, if he hasn't had any weapons in 4 years, he's gotten 4 years older in that time. He's 37 years old, about to be 38, I believe. He's long past his prime. He's long past his dues. Quite frankly, he looks like he should retire. And there's no excuse with Michael Pittman out that Jonathan Taylor only ends that game with 10 touches. You got to get your best player the ball more than 10 times if you expect to win.
Yeah, I agree. Frank Reich has got to do a better job of coaching.
How hot do you think his seat is right now?
Significantly hotter than it was in the offseason. Because they go out back-to-back years and get you quarterbacks. Granted, the Carson Wentz thing didn't exactly work, but you get Carson Wentz, it doesn't work out. You don't make the playoffs. Yes, some of it was on the play of Carson Wentz down the stretch. Some of it's on coaching. And then you turn around and they go get you another quarterback who you say you're kind of high on in Matt Ryan, and the season starts 0-2. If I'm not mistaken, the Colts started 0-4 last season. Am I wrong?
I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong. I don't know what they started, but I think you're wrong because that doesn't sound right.
But either way, it's not a good look if you're Frank Reich, and you've got back-to-back quarterbacks, and the coaching at this point is what you have to say is letting them down. Especially considering we'll talk about the game next, the Commanders versus the Lions. Carson Wentz hasn't looked horrendous as the quarterback of the Commanders. I think he's thrown 7 touchdowns in 2 games. That's yes, four interceptions, and I realize that. But he hasn't looked absolutely horrendous. Like, he's been serviceable. He's been exactly what we expected Carson Wentz to be, only albeit a few more yards than I would have expected. But as to your point, Matt Ryan is not a significant upgrade to Carson Wentz, and it's showing right now.
He's not any kind of upgrade to Carson Wentz. At this point, I'd even dare say he's a regression.
It looks it at this point.
Matt Ryan looks washed. Matt Ryan looks like he needs to retire at the end of the year.
I would agree with that. Jump right into it. Commanders, Lions. Obviously, I took the Commanders. Timmy took the Lions. I think you took the Commanders.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Obviously, we were wrong. The Dan Campbell-led Detroit Lions looked really good. And I'll be honest, I was saying this to my wife yesterday, sitting on the couch before the Eagles game. She was asking me if I was nervous about the Vikings. And I said, I got to be honest. I feel a little bit better than I did earlier in the week after I watched the Lions do what they did to the Commanders. Maybe the Lions aren't a bad team. Maybe the Eagles beat a good team in week 1. And I know that's hard to think. It's maybe somewhat inconceivable, but that's how it looks right now from an outside looking in. It looks like the Lions are going to be a problem.
I'm gonna sound like a broken record player. I know the title of the show was "I Was Wrong," but I've been right for months about the Lions now. You have a coach. This is one of the big things when you're talking about a rebuild. I just touched on it a little bit with the Giants. You have to have a coach that your guys can buy into. And the Lions have found that guy in Dan Campbell. Everybody thought he was kind of weird on his opening press conference last year when he first got hired, had some like WWE type energy, like smack a beer on his head, like Stone Cold Steve Austin type nonsense. But he looked great. I mean, he's got that team looking fantastic. They have a top 6 offensive line with a top 8 running back. They've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, who has been out of this world, and I will admit that I was kind of wrong on. I thought that he would be more of like a great number 2 guy. He's looking like he can be a fantastic number 1 in the NFL. So the Lions are a competitive team. I mean, I don't think that they're good enough quite yet, specifically on the defensive side of the football, to be a playoff contender. But I think I had them at 7-10 and losing a lot of close games. I think that prediction will hold very strong. That Lions team looks pretty good.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think I had them at 8 or 9 wins as well. Like right around that could be 500, right under 500 is where I think I had them, and they're looking like it. But yeah, so the Lions pick up their first win. Was it 11 weeks earlier than it was last year?
Yeah,
good for the Lions.
Yeah, they just look so much better. And wait till Jameson Williams comes back and they can really stretch the field.
Yeah. I keep forgetting Williams isn't even on the field yet. 49ers lose Trey Lance in the first quarter, broken ankle. He had surgery yesterday afternoon to get it repaired. He's out for the season. good for them. They kept Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster.
Yeah, no kidding.
The Seahawks just didn't.
It's unfortunate for Trey Lance because he started out that game looking pretty good. I mean, it was a very small sample size, but they started out that game looking pretty good. So the 49ers are getting bit by the injury bug. The starting running back Elijah Mitchell's out 2 months. Trey Lance out for the season. George Kittle has missed the first 2 games. He's likely to miss week 3 as well. And then the backup, which is Jeff Wilson, Tyrion Davis-Price, also got hurt. He's out 4 to 6 weeks. So they're looking a little thin across the board right now. And yet they are 1-1. You know, they kind of throttled the Seahawks. The Seahawks returned to normalcy, or what we thought they'd be. A solid win, but, you know, it's unfortunate to see Trey Lance go down. And it does bring up a good question as to, you know, if Jimmy Garoppolo plays similarly to what he did last year, what do the 49ers do?
That's a really good question. I think they've already been committed to Trey Lance, and I think this is Jimmy Garoppolo, regardless of what he does. I think this is Jimmy Garoppolo's last season in San Francisco. But there are teams who are going to need a quarterback. I'm looking at the Panthers. I'm looking at the Seahawks. Like, there's teams that are going to need a veteran quarterback on the roster, so he'll have somewhere to go next year.
That's my theory too. Is I think Garoppolo plays well enough to go somewhere else next year. But I mean, when you spend essentially 3 first-round picks to draft one guy, you're not gonna move off of him without seeing what he can do for a majority of the season, at least first.
Correct. Next game, Broncos hold off the Texans, who you almost spoke into existence a victory for. Go ahead.
Yeah, in Denver too. I was real nervous. You know, I'm not really like uncomfortable being like, man, I can't believe I got that one wrong. You know, the Texans are what they are. They're not a very good football team. However, after week 1, I was like, you know, they might compete a little bit. I thought the Texans would kind of be a little bit uncompetitive here and there. But I don't think this says a lot about the Texans. I think this says a lot about the Denver Broncos. Nathaniel Hackett is clearly not an NFL-ready coach yet. He's as unprepared as Kyler Murray is after Call of Duty comes out. I mean, he does not look like an NFL coach. The decisions that he's making, and I touched on it last week when they barely lost to the Seahawks in a game that they should have won by 2 touchdowns. Players aren't going to want to play for a guy like this very long. I'm telling you, this is like anti-Dan Campbell, anti-Brian Dable. Like, guys are not going to want to play for Nathaniel Hackett too long, and the team is going to check out on him real fast.
I think the biggest name in that, and he's already shown frustration, is Russell Wilson. And if you lose Russell Wilson, you've lost your job.
Yeah, if you lose the high-dollar quarterback that they just paid a bunch of money to, you're gone. I personally, you know, unless something drastic changes, I do not see Nathaniel Hackett coaching Denver Broncos next season, but that's just me.
Okay. Rams hold off the Falcons, and you have to say it that way because they opened up really nice. They played really well, and then the Falcons stormed back and almost took this game from the Rams.
I think it's another 3 scores at one point.
Yeah, I think this is another scenario of this says more about the Rams than the Falcons.
I think they just took their foot off the gas. Personally, the Rams don't know how to run the football. They haven't figured it out yet. Cam Akers finally got some touches, 15 carries, but it only got him 44 yards. I think, truthfully, if they continue to rely on Matthew Stafford to throw the ball even when they're ahead, it's going to spell bad news because you got to learn how to kill some clock to be a good football team. You know, they kind of got away with it last year, just, you know, running over and being a high flying offense, but that's going to catch up to you. So I feel like Sean McVay will make the appropriate adjustments. I feel like I'm more comfortable about the Rams than I am the Broncos 100%, but the Rams do not look like they are fantastic either. And that being said, Matthew Stafford and all of the starters for the Rams did not play in the preseason, not just the quarterback. So these are their preseason games. Really, I expect them to come out better in week 3.
All right. Raiders, 20 point lead the Raiders had?
They were up 23-0, I think.
Yeah, the Cardinals come from behind and win. I mean, you got to give credit where it's due. Kyler Murray really kind of put the team on his back because obviously Call of Duty, as you mentioned, hasn't come out yet. He willed the Cardinals to a victory. Now, listen, there were some bad defensive calls. You let Kyler Murray run around for 28 seconds before running into the end zone on an individual play. But, I mean, again, Kyler Murray and the Cardinals come back and beat the Raiders.
Yeah, no, I was listening to that game on Sirius XM, and the guys on the radio were like, man, what is the Raiders defense doing? And then it sounded like Marquise Brown about blew the game for them in overtime when he dropped that pass on fourth down, the long pass or whatever. And then out of nowhere, back-to-back fumbles by Hunter Renfrow. That's good on David Carr to not David, Derek Carr, third time's the charm. Derek Carr to show confidence in his guy after Renfrow fumbles to go right back to him. But Renfro's got to hold on to that football. And this is another team with a new coach that, quite frankly, does not look like he's going to last very long, and they're not heading in the right direction. They could not get anything going against the Chargers 2 weeks ago. This past weekend, they couldn't even hold a lead, couldn't run the clock out, couldn't do anything right in the second half. So the Josh McDaniels looks like he's about to head back to New England next year as the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, which brings me to a really quick point I want to make. I know we said it was going to be a quick show, and I do need it to be a quick show. However, looking back on it, the coaching trees for the two biggest names of our generation coaching, you've got the Andy Reid coaching tree and the Bill Belichick coaching tree. Bill Belichick's coaching tree is horrendous. You get a lot of guys who aren't even coaching anymore, and if they are, they're definitely not head coaches. Meanwhile, you've got a ton of head coaches who used to be in Andy Reid's tree. You got the Sean McDermotts, the Riverboat Rons, the Harbaughs sitting down there in Baltimore, and it just goes to show you that, like, when we say that Andy Reid is the best coach of this generation, we're not just full of shit. Like, we know we've seen it. Belichick may be a good coach, but he's not doing anything to assist the people around him.
Yeah, you kind of get that vibe from Belichick, though, that he's kind of not willing to share what makes him a good coach. It's almost like that he wants to keep his secrets so that way if he faces his guys, he has the upper hand, instead of, breeding guys to be the next great head coaches of the NFL. It's like he's keeping secrets from them. Now, obviously, I don't know that. I'm not sitting in the Patriots locker room or coaching office, but that you could definitely see that from the vibe and just his mannerisms, the way that he stands on the sideline, how grouchy he is in his pre and post game interviews.
I would agree with that. Bengals blow a game that they should have had no business losing. Now, having said that, if they don't get some offensive line help, if they don't get Burrow some offensive line help, Burrow's going to be in trouble.
I don't necessarily blame the offensive line entirely. They have played. They went out and spent money on the offensive line, I think $70 million in the offseason to upgrade the offensive line, and they're playing worse than they did last year. I don't think it's a talent issue. I think it's a miscommunication issue. It looks like they're not picking up. How do you let Micah Parsons go free running at your quarterback twice? But at the same time, the guy in charge of making the calls, the slide protections, it's Joe Burrow. I feel like it's a coaching issue. It could be an offensive line communication issue. It could also be a Joe Burrow issue. I feel like when they're playing this bad, that it's not just one person or this person. I feel like it's a collective effort to be that bad.
Yeah. Next game, I was just really upset at the Bengals for blowing that game. Look, I know Micah Parsons is a heck of an athlete, but something's got to be done to stop him so that Burrow has a few seconds to throw the ball.
The Bengals are way better than this. They got to figure it out. But as I touched on in the offseason, those big boomer bust plays, they're hard to rely on. They're very the ebbs and flows. You weren't going to expect that same kind of efficiency that the Bengals had last year. That was impossible.
Yeah. Sunday Night Football, Packers handily take care of the Bears. We predicted that. We talked about how
last week. So
yeah. We had talked about it last week really quick about how Aaron Rodgers lost week 1 last week, and then he really turned it around. They went on a 13-3 run. And I don't know if they'll do a 13-3 run, but when he says relax, I believe that Aaron Rodgers really does mean relax. And he looked completely different with Alan Lazard on the field, and I liked that the first pass he went to this week was to Christian Watson.
Yep.
I like that.
He learned his lesson.
Yeah. Monday Night Football, 2 games, doubleheader. The Buffalo Bills, we don't even got to talk about that one very long, absolutely destroyed the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, the Titans ended up sitting their starters at the end of the third quarter. And really what I want to touch on most is Malik Willis coming in the game and playing quarterback. And I know what Mike Vrabel said shouldn't have been said out loud, but in the preseason when he told Malik Willis he needs to learn to throw the ball, this is the reason why. Malik Willis looked terrible, and I mean terrible, throwing the football. I mean, he looked totally lost. He looked like he was not ready for any kind of NFL game speed, any kind of NFL offense. He looked terrible. I cannot stress that enough. So as bad as Ryan Tannehill looked, his job in no way, shape, or form is in jeopardy. Malik Willis is absolutely not ready to be an NFL quarterback. And as I've said before, I don't think he ever will, but that's just me.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think the other thing to take away from this is as of right this second, Josh Allen is the best player in football.
Yeah, I would say that. I would agree with that.
Yeah. And then the game that we obviously will spend a few more seconds talking about. Do you want to bring it up and tell us that you were wrong? Do you want to do it?
Yeah. So I was right about the Eagles being offensive. I was wrong about the Vikings being offensive. Man alive. John Gannon actually came with a game plan, and for the most part, he stuck to it. And imagine that. Man coverage does work when you have three very good cornerbacks. They picked Kirk Cousins off 3 times, 2 by Darius Slay. He should have had about 4 or 5. Avonte Maddox had one himself on a very nice catch. And the defensive line provided a little bit of pressure, but it was really on the secondary. You know, a lot of great coverage schemes. I can't say enough about it for the most part. John Gannon, when he stuck with his man coverage, you know, developed the right game plan. And I say that when he stuck with his man coverage because, ironically enough, the 2 zone drives that he ran, they walked right down the field on him. So good job, John Gannon, making the adjustments. But now the key is consistency. Can he make the right game plan? Can he trust his defensive backs to do that job week in and week out? They just did it against 2 very good receivers in Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. So I would expect that maybe they go more towards man coverage in the coming weeks.
Which is ideal for the cornerbacks skill set that we have. It makes sense. Bradbury's a very good one-to-one corner. Darius Slay, one of the best one-to-one corners. Avonte Maddox, the best slot corner in the game. And now you got Chauncey Gardner Johnson, CGJ, who can cover too. Like, so you've got the coverage guys. You may as well let them cover. If you want to drop a linebacker in zone and like cover the center of the field, fine. You want to leave a safety deep, fine. I also like that in key situations, Gannon was blitzing. Something we have not seen over the last 17 games. Was John Gannon dialing up a blitz at the right time. And he did.
Yeah, the blitzing was a good one. And another thing was Darius Slay didn't follow Justin Jefferson to the slot, but he always followed him to that side of the field. So if he was on the left side of the field, Darius Slay was on the outside of the left side of the field. If Justin Jefferson was on the right side of the field, Darius Slay was on the right side of the field, either lined up on Jefferson or the nearest receiver to him. And that's the way you got to do it. Keep your if you don't want to have Slay follow to the slot, that's fine. He's not a slot cornerback. You have a fantastic slot cornerback that can do just fine. But John Gannon came out with the appropriate game plan this week. Defense, for the most part, well job. One big thing for the defense, though, still only 1 sack. As much as we're talking about the good coverage, you know, you hear the term coverage sack a lot, and it means that the secondary's got their guys, you know, manned up very well, and there's nowhere for the quarterback to go with the ball, and then the defensive line gets there. They got to fix the pass rush to get home to the quarterback. That's probably the only real negative that I have consistently with Jonathan Gannon's defense and last night.
I would agree with that. Jalen Hurts looked great. First quarterback in history with 300-plus passing yards, 50-plus rushing yards, and at least 2 total touchdowns.
And 80% completion. Yeah, I would say the offense as a whole, especially Jalen Hurts, had a fantastic first half. And my bone to pick with the offense is, what the hell were you doing in the second half?
It's like you let off the gas.
Yeah, the Eagles, you know, they're going to have to learn how to ice games. And for a team that runs the ball so well, you'd think it would come so easy to them. For example, a blocked field goal in the fourth quarter, that can't happen. There's no excuse for that. That cannot happen. That interception that went right off of Gainwell's hands. What the hell are you doing throwing the ball? You're up 24-7. Just run it. You're one of the best, if not the best, running team in football. Run the ball. But the offense went completely stagnant, completely flat. And if all honesty, if it wasn't for Kirk Cousins being the best player on the Eagles, I would say the Vikings outplayed the Eagles in the second half. It just happened that Kirk Cousins can't throw the ball to anybody except Darius Slay.
Yeah.
But collectively, between the block field goal, the interception, I mean, the offense for the Eagles. Now, granted, I'm not going to sit here and hammer them. Some of it has to do with the fact that they did change the game plan because they were up so big. but that you got to figure out a better way to do it, because against good teams, like top tier teams, your Tampa Bays, your Green Bays, you start throwing interceptions and getting field goals blocked, they're going to convert that into points, and that 24-7 becomes 24-21 like that. That's what I kept saying. That's what I kept saying to people in the fantasy chat. All it takes is one play, and they could have been right back in it. Fortunately, Kirk Cousins did not allow that team to capitalize.
Yeah, speaking of Kirk Cousins, I sat here making our predictions, and the biggest thing I said was Kirk Cousins is trash in prime time, and I proved to be right on that one.
What's he got? One Monday night win in his career?
One. Yeah, I think he's like 1-9 now, 1-10, something like that.
Something tells me it was against the Eagles.
I don't want to say it was.
So I do know that he has one Monday night win and that he's like genuinely god awful on Monday night, but I don't know. He was awful. And another point to touch on, the Vikings are inside the 5, and for 3 straight plays, they throw the football, and Dalvin Cook standing in the backfield as a top 5 running back in the NFL. Like, what are you doing? So the Vikings I would say the Vikings, overthought the second half. They could have definitely gotten back in the game. So that would be my only downside, is that the Eagles need to learn how to ice a game. That would. Other than that, they played an almost flawless first half.
All right. Timmy took the Browns for Thursday. Who you got?
It's the Steelers and Browns, right?
Yeah, in Cleveland.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Steelers. Just because of what happened this past week with the Browns, I don't trust them to finish games.
I'm in the same boat as you. I'm going Steelers. I think Trubisky has a bit of a bounce back game. It'll still be close, 23-17, something like that.
I'd say 17-14. Thursday night games generally aren't that high scoring anyway, and these two offenses aren't great.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, yeah, Steelers, Browns. And that'll do it for – you got anything else before we get off?
Yeah, who do you think the best team in the NFC is today?
Today, based on what I've seen in the NFC?
Yep, because there's a lot of talk about the Eagles are the team to beat in the NFC.
It's still too early to say that, man.
That's where my head's at, man. Like, let's slow the train down a little bit. The Eagles haven't even played legit teams. I want to see them against the Packers, the Buccaneers. I want to see them against the Rams. Truthfully, I'm never gonna. If we rolled up into Green Bay tomorrow, I'm not betting against Rodgers. Not gonna happen. If we roll into Tampa,
Rodgers, no.
We roll into Tampa this weekend, I'm not gonna sit here and say that the Eagles definitely beat Tom Brady. Not gonna happen.
With the way they played against the Saints last week, I'd say that they have a significantly better shot.
I'm not taking that chance.
Even
without Mike Evans.
If I had to give you a team right now, best team in the NFC, I'd probably go Packers.
I think I'd probably go Bucks.
Yeah, see, it's those two veteran quarterbacks. Yeah,
they're missing. I mean, the Bucks are missing pieces everywhere. Godwin hasn't really played. Evans is going to be suspended a game, and he got ejected in the middle of that game last week. And the Saints always play them tough. It's like week 1 for the Packers. Last year they played like crap week 1. This year they played like crap week 1. I'm not going to. It's the veteran quarterbacks get more rest through the offseason. Rodgers and Brady didn't play in the preseason. Brady now actually gets every single Wednesday off for the whole season because of his age and, the fact that he needs to recoup a little bit better. So that's good for him, I guess. But truthfully, I wouldn't – right now I'd put the Eagles at number 3, maybe a hair ahead of the Rams, because I do think that they could beat the Rams right now.
All right. Yeah, that's probably where I'd put them, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not –
and then it's the Bills in the AFC. I think we're cool with that.
The Bills are far and away, and then the Chiefs.
Yeah. All right. You ready to put your little outro on?
Yeah. Let me get ready. Good call.
Yeah, that's no problem. Thanks for joining us here again on BSing Sports. I know it was a quick show, but we appreciate everything you guys do for us. Continue to follow, continue to share, continue to like. And thanks for joining us here on BSing Sports, where we do a little BS and we talk a whole lot of sports. Have a good night.
Have a good night.